So yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask you how, because you came into this whole thing by accident, and how are you finding it? This kind of content and the sort of holistic approach, in this the realm of self-development, let's call it, you and your mates and stuff. Like, how's it for you?
I think the reason that I do find it interesting is if the sort of general public is at a 0 on the self-awareness scale, I think I was in the negative when I was younger. And and when you were talking about your 3 pillars, you said one of them was know thyself, which made me think of when people go traveling and they say, find yourself. And I went traveling and claimed that I found myself. And then within a very short amount of time, realized that I'd only just breached the very top layer of self-awareness. And there's a whole journey to undertake. And realizing that, I became very invested in it. And that's where I was so thrilled to be a part of this. I think what I like so much about our content is going back to what we were just saying about the social media. I find that a lot of the content out there is so aggressive and all or nothing, and you're failing if you're not this, and you must be waking up at 5 a.m., meditating, journaling, you must be or you're not going to get your goal. And that's something that I find, I'm very resisting to that. And I know you're somebody that's part of the 5 a.m. club. And just personally, that's something that wouldn't work with my lifestyle, because the way I have fun is I'm an extrovert. I like to socialize with my friends. And usually that's in the evening when we're all free. So I can't be then getting up at 5 a.m. So my lifestyle just doesn't fit that at this time. But what I like about what we talk about and with the guests is it's much more softer. Take what is useful. Here is some wisdom. We're not telling you to go to a hypnotherapist or climb mountains or go to Bali and go through a holistic experience or something. Yeah. We're just saying, here's some stuff. This is helpful for these people. Take what works for you.
Yeah, here's a suite of things that you can do. This is what,
And also here are life experiences. I respond so much better to people's stories. And that's what will make me go to a monastery or something. So
I think that's really interesting. And, you're right. The social media thing, you get bombarded with stuff. And actually, it's really bad. Comparison is the thief of all happiness, as they say. And there's a lot of comparison that happens when you're on social media, and that can be really unhealthy for people. But I think it's all about getting clear, right? It's all about getting clear on what you want and what's going to work for you. And so you have to kind of expose yourself to stuff to figure out what's out there, because you can't decide whether you want to join the 5 a.m. club or you want to do cold showers if you don't even know that they exist, right? So let yourself get bombarded with some stuff and then try some things and then take what works and then switch it all off, which would be my advice. And I think, one of the most powerful things is being really clear on knowing what you want. And if you're really clear on knowing what you want, then you can be ruthless about saying no to everything else. It's either a hell yes or it's work or it's putting me into the direction closest to the things I like and I want, or just say no to everything else. And that's really powerful. Like the more conviction you have around what you want, the more conviction you have around saying no to the shit that's not helping, right?
So something that I hear in the same narrative where people are telling you to get up at 5 a.m. and take those cold showers, there's advice that you hear as well. And something people do say is cut people out of your life if they're not helping you. I think actually you said you had to make some changes in that way. And I know there are people who aren't pushing me to what I want to be, but that the concept of the cutting people out is something that I'm extremely resisting to. And if a life coach said, this is the answer, this is your problem, this is why you're not sailing through, it just wouldn't work for me, because that's just not who I am.
No, it makes sense. It makes total sense. But as always, it's not binary. It's a lot more nuanced than cut everyone out of your life that's not pulling you towards your goal. Like that, okay, maybe some people are ruthless like that. But certainly you just don't want to be in a situation where you are really trying to get to a certain place in life and reach certain goals, and you are spending 70% of your time hanging out with people that are doing, are not adding anything to that, and they're actually pulling you in a different direction. Personally, I gotta be careful what I say here, but I definitely have, over the last few years, when I've got a lot more clear and serious about where I'm going and the kind of life that I want to create for myself, I've been a lot more deliberate and intentional around like my time, first of all. So, that cuts out, we collect all of these. Okay, so this conversation, it transcends the friends thing, right? It sort of, it transcends everything. This is how, when we're born and we grow up and we go through our teens and school and 20s and 30s, we are accumulating habits, beliefs, friends, stuff, experiences. And a lot of all that is random. It's happening to us randomly, right? And so you collect all this stuff. You collect friends, you collect beliefs, you collect experiences, you collect mindsets, you collect opinions, right? And then you get to a point and we're like, actually, hang on a second. This all just happens so randomly. Maybe it's not in line with who I am deep down and what I really want, And so this is where the self-awareness piece comes in. Maybe get lucky and all those things compound to, putting you on your perfect fulfillment, purpose, life, goals, success, people, everything, inner peace, happiness. But maybe it doesn't. And so you have to unravel and unbuckle a lot of this stuff and be like, well, actually, no, this is what I really want. And this isn't helping. And that's not helping. And he's not helping. And they're not helping. So you have to get rid of, you have to cut the slack. If you unravel a lot of this stuff and you get rid of a lot of the baggage, both internally, externally, all of a sudden you've got a bit of a clean slate and you've got all this energy and attention back. And then you can be like, right, where am I going? Where am I deliberately going to deploy my energy, time, and attention? Like these people, that thing, that environment, that work. And it doesn't mean, you have to like ruthlessly like cut everyone you ever knew out of your life. Like, we've all got family, friends, school friends that might not want the same things in life, but we bloody love them. We have a laugh with them. We grew up with them. It's like, no, I want you, but actually there are some new people that I want who share, who talk about the shit that I like talking about.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly what you're saying, but it always reminds me of, and I know I've said this to you before, Ollie Brown, not knowing until he was so old that he wasn't he wasn't even being himself. He wasn't even living his own life. And I think it's that same idea of strip back to actually, because you're right, like all our life experiences have made this creation of where we are so far. How much of that do we actually hold dear? How much is that just because we've been told or our parents have been told? I think so much is just that upbringing of like, oh, okay, you take it standard.
And it accumulates and it gets so complicated and it all stacks on top of each other. You've got to keep everyone happy and do things because you feel you're meant to. And, I tell you, like, I never thought I'd be sitting here, Ben, talking to you in this freaking studio, talking about self-awareness and all this mumbo jumbo stuff. But I am telling you, like, my life used to be so complicated, so stressful. I was doing everything I was doing was like just because. That was what you were meant to do. But simplifying all this shit and being really clear on, what you want to be doing, how you're deliberately designing your own life. And that's like, that's all, even, you're deliberately designing your own, how your mind works when you're meditating or journaling and, trying to create. I was so negative before, I was just slagging people off, talking about them behind their backs. The people I was surrounded with would do that as well. And I'm like, that's just like, that's a habit. That's a habitual thing. Trying to change that and deliberately be positive and think and catch myself when I'm thinking or saying negative things and turning it around and actually, rather than saying something negative about something, praise them and be complimentary. I mean, it's just it's just a game changer. And that simplicity, you are clawing back your power. And then then you're like, shit, I can deploy this wherever I want, because you've only got so much time and energy, and there's so much noise out there. And if you shut away the noise and then you deliberately go out there and deploy it where you want to, with the knowledge that a certain formula of intent and clarity and consistency and discipline and all of that good stuff can really get you wherever you want in life, that's quite exciting, you know?
It's made me thought of that phrase that I hear quite a lot, which is working in your 20s to live in your 30s. And then often I find people push that back, and it's working in your 30s to live in your 40s and things like that. And that's something I've always resisted, quite obviously, as I'm living in Vietnam. It's not like I'm sort of putting down a mortgage deposit.
How old are you, Ben?
25.
You're 25, yeah.
Yeah. And I find that sort of I resist that quite a lot. I'm sort of trying to live in my 20s, and I'll work in my 30s or something. But actually, what you're saying seems to fit that very well. Like, work in your 20s and all this stuff, so you can be living in your 30s as who you actually are, and then going through life the proper way.
I mean, it doesn't have to happen like that. It can happen, you don't have to wait a decade to really figure out like what's important, but certainly doing as much as you can and having lots of different experiences will inform and help oneself understand what one loves and what one likes, and the different environments that to help inform like how you what works and what doesn't.
There's something that is it something like it takes 30 days to make a habit or something? Or is 20
I actually weirdly I watched a clip of James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, which is by far the best book on habits out there. He was doing an interview on CNBC. I think it was CNBC or one of these programs. And they asked him this, like, what is it? 21 days? And he's like, yeah, you get all this. But actually, whoever's asking that question, really what they're saying is like, how long do I have to like put effort in before I can be lazy again, right?
Or before it isn't feeling like it's effort anymore.
And actually, like, that's the wrong thing. He says that's the wrong thing to say, because a habit is for life. And so I know that's just one of those annoying things, but it kind of turns things around into say that a habit shouldn't be like this thing that you're really struggling with. You're front loading, and yes, you have to front load it to an extent to make it become a habit, but it's about making things easy and breaking them down and making them manageable. So it's like, it's easy to program those habits into your everyday life. And then it takes work forever. Just the work gets a little bit easier. And I think, again, it's subjective. It's like, depending on you, your environment, the habit, then it depends, whether it takes a week, a month, a year.
Are there any habits that you consider like the core, or for you, your sort of core habits?
I think I've actually brought with me a couple of pages from my book, and I have consolidated the 6 big ideas as far as I'm concerned, like from all of the reading that I've done on habits. And I'm just going to sort of paraphrase some of this for you, and it'll answer that question. And for me, that's about the question you're asking is sort of, to me, that's what's a keystone habit, what's a meta habit. And what I mean by that is a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if you do one particular habit really well, then that'll sort of make some of the other habits quite easy. So like getting up at 5 a.m. Like if you just do that, then you kind of had to go to bed early. You probably didn't go out. You're up at 5 a.m. anyway, so you may as well go to the gym and do the other stuff and, drink 2 liters of water or whatever it is. Same with not drinking, same with going to the gym. You know, those 3, if you're doing one of those things during the day, then you're more than likely, you know, if you're working out every day, you're going to have that energy and you might not be drinking anyway. Or if you're not drinking, then you might go to the gym and you've got more energy and just a bit more organized. So it's finding like a proper meta habit that will inform everything else. I mean, it comes on to this idea of willpower, right? Which is one of the points. There's this experiment, right? It's called the radish experiment, where there are 2 groups of students and they both fasted for a certain amount of days. They're really hungry and they go into the laboratory, and one group, there are these cookies, deliciously freshly cooked cookies, and they smell really nice and whatever. One group's allowed to eat the cookies and one group isn't. The group that isn't can only eat radishes, right? So both groups go in and, you know, one group are tucking away at the cookies and the other group are clearly frustrated and resisting, and they pick them up and smell them and put them back and whatever, but they resist and they eat the radishes, right? Then both groups go to the next stage and they're given these like complex puzzles to solve. And they thought they were being tested for their IQ, but actually they were being tested for something else. And what transpired was that the group that didn't have to spend energy resisting the cookies, so the group that were eating the cookies, they were working on those puzzles, which, by the way, had no answer. So they were unsolvable puzzles, right? They were working on those puzzles for 20 minutes on average, right? But the group that had to resist the cookies could only work on the puzzles for 8 minutes, and they gave up over 8 minutes. And so the eureka moment, the aha moment there was that willpower and self-control gets depleted like a muscle. So it's like a Duracell battery. So what this study basically uncovered was that when we wake up every morning, we've kind of got a recharged battery of willpower and self-control. So once one understands that, it gets depleted. You know that you've only got a certain amount of willpower and self-control to deploy during the day. So that's why if at the beginning of the year in January is like, right, Ben, you know, I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna stop this. You know, I'm gonna not booze. I'm gonna get up at 5 a.m. I'm gonna read. You know, you got all of these things, and then, or more importantly, you're gonna stop drinking, stop sugar, stop processed food. So you got to do all that. It's like you're never gonna do it because you haven't got enough willpower to do all of them. And so, what I like is the doubling down and, you know, deployment of that willpower on certain meta habits and being really clear about which habits you're going to try and choose that will then inform everything else. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the other one is the habit loop. This is something that a guy called Charles Duhigg talks about. I hope I pronounce his name right, in The Power of Habit. And basically the habit loop is broken down into cue, routine, and reward. And it's this whole idea that if we're going to try and form new habits or break bad habits, it helps to understand the science behind how our bodies create habits in the first place, because then you can almost like hack the process, right? And this falls in line with keeping habits super simple and super easy and super low friction, because you want to make the habit easy, so then, you know, it's easier to do, you're expending less willpower, and it's just gets put into the automated part of your subconscious, right?
And more reward, I imagine, as well. More success in that field.
It's actually less about that. This feedback loop is more about I've got it here, a quote. Without habit loops, our brains would shut down, overwhelmed by the minutiae of daily life. So it's like the way we can't, if we were trying to think about consciously everything that we did, then our brains would just overload and there wouldn't be any space for thinking about stuff we really need to use our brain for. And so it's more about understanding that our brains delegate certain things to our subconscious that are automated and form habits. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the way it works is there's a cue, a routine, and reward. He talks about McDonald's, which is classic because, you know, a lot of people are addicted to fast food and stuff. And it's like McDonald's are like one of the best in the business in getting us to form dangerously strong habits. For example, every McDonald's looks the same to deliberately try to standardize the store's architecture and what employees say to customers. So everything is a consistent cue. So that cue is always as strong as possible. When people see the golden arches and they go there and they got the same stuff, it makes the cue really, really strong and really easy. So that cue triggers eating. So it's a really strong cue, and that triggers the eating routine. So the eating bit is the routine, and then the reward is, you know, that immediate reward. The fries he talks about, for instance, are designed to begin disintegrating the moment they hit your tongue in order to deliver a hit of salt and grease as fast as possible, causing your pleasure centers to light up and your brain to lock in the pattern. All the better for tightening the habit loop, right? So you can see how, you know, people try and hack the habit loop to reinforce habits. And so if you're trying to, I suppose, utilize that and hack the habit loop, what it might look like is, if you're trying to create a new habit, you've got to create a really obvious cue. So what that might be is, if you want to, if you're talking about working out or going for a run, like as soon as you get home, you got to go for a run. Like that's always your cue. That's a big part of the day. It's not just you're just sitting around and you just, at one point you're going to get up and go for a run. It's like, no, when I get home, I go for a run. And then you got to clearly define the reward. So when you get back, maybe you can have a beer, or you can have guilt-free TV and just relax. So you got to try and think about what that reward's got to be, because you got to sort of hack the biology or chemistry in your body, right? To get it automated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we've got willpower, the depletion of the self-control, and we've got the habit loop. The third one is, it's a bit sort of obvious, but it's worth reminding everyone that habit is all about process. I think it was Desmond Tutu that said that there's only one way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time, or something to that effect. And this is all about, you know, it's not about thinking about the big goal. How can I get there? How can I do that? It's about how can you create habits that and processes that lead us to just waking up one day and you've learned Spanish, or you've got fit, or you've saved a lot of money, right? And it's about making these habits easy and then building on them. And it's all about process. So I've got a couple of quotes here from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, again, and this will help reinforce what I'm saying. So goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the process that lead to the results. Another one is, your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. That makes sense? Yeah. Then fix the inputs and the outputs will fix themselves. You know, so
I've heard that one.
you can see how it's, I mean, the last one sums it up, and this is his sort of champion quote: you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so all of this stuff is just reinforcing the fact that you have to fall in love with the process, not the outcome. And that's making it enjoyable, that's breaking it down, making it simple. Process.
That's really, it's because that kind of goes to what we were talking about before, how if things seem so intense, you know, if the way it appears through things like social media is you must be doing all these things immediately, and it's just unachievable. Like you were saying with the New Year's resolutions, you just cannot, you don't have the strength to go into that straight away. But it looks often like that's the only way. It looks a bit like you have to take the whole package. You can't just start somewhere. But what you're saying is actually, like the muscle, you are developing it and it compounds and you bring in more because you have those foundation.
Yeah. It's like press ups, you know, you might You're like, oh, I want to do 100 press ups a day, whatever. And you go in hard and you try and do 50. Just do like one a day and then do two, like one every day every week and then two every day. And then you get to the end of the year and you're actually doing 300 a day, but it's like a proper habit. And it's a bit like this podcast. Like I know that everything always boils down to habits and consistency and self-discipline. And you see so many people doing podcasts and like getting all excited about it. I think someone said the other day on Twitter, they likened the amount of people starting a podcast in January 2023 was like the amount of people wanting to, start their fitness in January. And then by February, like they've all given up, right? I just knew it was about consistency. And so I was like, no, we're just going to keep it really simple and easy. We're not going to do one a day or one a week or 3 a month. We're going to do one a month. That is it. Because life gets in the way and this and that. And I think you'll agree, it was hard enough doing one a month at the beginning, figuring out all the stuff. But where are we now? We've remained consistent and we do one a month. And that's half the battle. And it's getting easier now and it's getting more efficient, etc. And so it's making it easy. Because for sure, if we'd done one a week, we would have given up by now. It would have been too much. So that's process. Number 4, and I really like this one because it links in nicely to some of the other stuff we were talking. Identity matters. So here's another one from James Clear. A quote, "True behavior change is identity change. The goal is not to read the book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician." So, I mean, that was a massive aha moment for me when you say, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? You kind of, you own it. And he talks about how one of the biggest barriers to positive change is identity conflict. So, you're trying to be the runner and train for a marathon and be all that, but then actually you're out getting pissed every night. So a runner wouldn't do that. And I have an example how that adopting that method helped me was when I was trying to learn Spanish. Like for years I tried to learn Spanish, but I just told myself at school that I'm shit at languages, right? And when I was around people who were speaking Spanish, I just thought I was shit, so I'd never even try. But then I told myself, no, I'm a Spanish speaker. I've got enough of a baseline to like I can speak Spanish. It's like I can do this. Although I'm a bit rusty, I am a Spanish speaker, and that then allowed me to like have the confidence to keep going and talk more, and the feedback loop just translated into me actually being able to like get my intermediate Spanish exam, whatever, and now I'm like a proficient Spanish. But that mindset thing was completely, it's like, no, I can speak Spanish, like, although not very well. And that was a big one for me. He says, James Clear again, the tighter we cling to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. If you're the joker in the pack and everyone's expecting you to be the party guy and go to the party and be down the pub and be that person, it's quite hard to let go of that because that's what kind of, you're that guy, right? That's what everyone expects you to be. But, if you've got some really strong goals and you're fed up of like taking your clothes off and having a belly or whatever, and you want to get fit, or it's like, you're going to be conflicted. And so you got to be able to let go and create self-worth in and around a new identity. But that understanding that identities and our beliefs and our and the meanings we wrap around things, it's all malleable. It's not like a rock, it's like a river. You know what I mean? The 5th one is your environment. I've got change your environment, change your life. And I'm a big believer that a lot of this habit stuff, it doesn't matter how much willpower you have, it doesn't matter, how easy you make them. If you're surrounded, if you're surrounded by the wrong people or the wrong things, then it's just going to be really, really hard to pull yourself, towards those good habits and break those bad habits. I've got a couple of really nice quotes here. So you've got find a group of people who challenge and inspire you, spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life forever. And that's Brendan Bouchard's High Performance Habits. Then we've got experts agree also that the person you will be 1, 5, 10, 20 years from now depends almost entirely on your future environment. And that's David Schwartz, The Magic of Thinking Big. And then James Clear again, nothing sustains motivation better than belonging to a tribe. I mean, we've all heard you're the average of the 5 people you spoke. It just makes sense. If you're in an environment where everyone's doing these things and pulling together and whatever, you're curating your physical environment as well. So you haven't got loads of junk food around, and all your bad habit cues are just there, dotted around the place. If you are an architecture of your environment, both people and culture with, and the things that are around you, then that has a massive impact on the success of creating new habits. One thing that is probably worth pointing out, that if you're trying to start a lot of new habits, a really powerful thing is to put yourself in a brand new environment, because you are moving away from a lot of legacy cues. So all of those you get home, you switch on the TV, or, you might order that takeaway or that coffee on the way home, or you might hang out with that next door neighbor. If you were to actually move to a new house or a new city, a new environment or new work, to an extent, those environmental habit cues are not going to be there. And so you can redesign things more effectively.
And you and Esmond talked a lot about environment, I remember. That was the thing that he was really needed to change.
Well, yeah, he almost needed to step outside of the British bubble of the reinforcement of that conditioning and beliefs that he was trying to sort of step away from, to, I suppose, get to know his self and create conviction around who he really was, and let go of the pieces that weren't working for him, and then sort of re-engage with that conviction, and then know the kind of person that he wants to be, and sort of who he is. So I think that's really interesting. And then the last one is really, it's a clear and definite purpose, having that, because and we've spoken about it before, Simon Sinek talks about having that, know your why. If we've got a really good reason to want to do something, and we're really clear about why that is, it's going to be it's a lot easier to stay on course, right?
I imagine that's quite almost the hardest bit, because you'd need to know your goals, which is something people often find quite difficult to pin down.
Yeah, I've got here, without a clear reason for why we're committing to certain goals, the bombardment of distractions, temptations, and opportunities in life will inevitably put us off course. So I think my book's a good example. This is a project that if I knew how much it would take, what needed to go into it, I probably would never have I would never have started it. But this thing has meant a lot to me. I wanted to get it out in the world. I wanted to make it great, and I have a strong conviction that when it's finished, curated into the hybrid of the story and the insights and life lessons and values into a cool story, honest story, it will really help people into hopefully becoming more educated around what's out there, and maybe a catalyst or a motivation to taking a first step into trying something, right? I had changed their life, but I'm not going to try it. It's just a catalyst, and what's out there, and it's not as mumbo jumbo as you think, right? And this thing, I'm not one of these people. I could never stick to habits before. I could never follow through on anything, Ben. I was so short-term focused, but I've on average written for an hour and a half every day for the last 4 to 5 years, right? On average. And the only reason I've been able to do that is because it's really important to me. And it's just I just have a lot of conviction that this is what I want to do, and this is the outcome that I want to arrive at. And so it just makes it really easy to say no to other stuff and just stay on course. Now, okay, that's quite a big thing. How does that translate into someone's fitness goals or whatever? But it's like, I think it's important to dig into these things. Like, oh, I want a six pack. I want to look good on the beach. Like, well, is that like, why do you really want that? Like, why is that really important to you? You know, maybe what's more important to you is like playing tennis with your mates. You know, maybe that's like what you always wish you could do at school, and, you know, life got in the way and you're actually quite good at it. So, you know, maybe focus on that and yeah, you want to look good and feel good and stuff, you know, for your relationships and self-esteem, self-worth, and just, you know, stick to something that you said you were going to stick to, and sort of just get into it a little bit more, right? And then be like, okay, I'm not going to ask a lot of myself, but, you know, I want to kind of prove to myself that I'm not totally useless at sticking to anything. And let's just pick one thing. I really love tennis. Like, maybe make that connection to when you were a kid and like owe that to yourself. Like, that's what you really enjoy. And just do that, right? And then give it a bit more meaning. And so when your mate or this or that football game or the birthday or that person that, you know, you just feel you ought to, it's like, no, this is really important to me. Maybe I want to be playing it with my kids as well. You know, I don't want to get out of shape. Like, I'm into my 40s and 50s now. I've got a bit of a dodgy knee. I want to stay mobile. You know, this is important to me so I can kick a football around my kids, you know, like that gives it meaning. And so like, this is what we're going to do and this is the plan. So I think that's important. And there's a nice little equation that I've got here, which is, you know, how do you arrive at that? First of all, you need the self-awareness piece. You need to understand oneself, like not what everyone else wants or your parents or your friends or society or whatever. Like, what's important to you? Like the little example about the tennis, that's self-awareness. And through self-awareness, you get clarity. And through clarity, you get your purpose. And that's a big winner for sticking to habits, basically.
I think the example you gave is really good, because I actually know quite a few people who right now are working out for the goal of looking good and attractive. And I wouldn't say that's a bad thing if that's what would make you happy, but every one of them is not happy with their progress and the way they're looking. And that, you know, you compliment them, you're saying like, oh, you're looking great. Like, it's really paying off. They don't hear it. It's just, no, you know, this is bad. I need to. So it's so funny. Like, that's not a purposeful goal. It's not something you can really ever
put emotion, put some emotion into it. Yeah.
It's just this sort of
meaning.
Yeah. It's a bit empty in that way.
Got you thinking, hasn't it?
Yeah. Because I remember when I was working out, I was like, when I had to stop working out because of having to have surgery, I was thinking, oh, you know, what was all this for, my progress? But then I just had to readjust my goal and say, well, now I want to get stronger. That's what I want to achieve. I want to be able to be a stronger human. And that made me have a more positive, get back to it, you know, that attitude. So, yeah.
Are there any habits that you're trying to stick to at the moment?
Well, I used to be a lot better. There's certainly ones that I'm trying to stick to. And I find some things easy. Getting up straight out of bed and going to the gym, that's not a problem. I have no problem doing that. Journaling, that's something I have a problem with. Sitting down, spending time on that process, distractions, you know. TV
is there any particular time of day you try and journal?
For me, it's all about environment, actually. I have to go to somewhere where I can get away from everything and enter. So usually I would do that in the afternoon on a weekend or never on a weekday, because I'd never enter that environment.
That's not going to work. There's too many things to get in the way. There's not enough meaning and not enough purpose behind that. If I were you, I would do something called habit stacking. So if you've already got a habit that's really nicely ingrained in what you do, like having your coffee in the morning or you get out of bed and go to the gym, if you can couple that with your journaling. So after you finish your workout, you know, that little bit of quiet time once you're in the changing room, maybe you're hot, you just want to like cool down before you get the sweats, before you walk outside kind of thing, and just slow your heart rate a little bit. Just go and find a quiet spot while you have your coffee or your juice or whatever and do your journaling then. Like linking it to something you already do will make it infinitely easier.
Definitely makes sense. It's like you're on a roll. Don't stop.
And in the mornings are always easy as well because you've got more willpower and more self-control, energy to put towards it. But I think all of this stuff is really geared towards one thing, and that's sort of sharpening the self-discipline muscle. So, I think it was some scientists in here. Yeah, in Roy Baumeister and John Tierney's New York bestseller, Willpower, they explain that not only how willpower is like a muscle and can become fatigued, but it can also be strengthened over time through exercise. Improving willpower, they say, is the surest way to a better life. And they talk about that. Like the majority of people who are living the happiest, most fulfilled lives, they have a lot of willpower and self-control. And you can exercise that and you can make it better. And so by doing the ice baths, it's something you really don't like, but you do it anyway and it gets easier. And so when you do that, maybe it's going to be easier not to eat the McDonald's or the cookies, because you're just sharpening the blade of self-discipline and self-control. And that, all of self-development and self-improvement really like boils down to one heuristic, which is think long-term, not short-term. Avoid short-term gratification. So how do we do that? By being more self-disciplined and having better control, which I think is quite powerful. So a lot of those things are really there to just, make us better at doing things that we don't want to do.
Something that I also, because like we've discussed, it's so clear how it can compound. And once you start, you can keep going and you can achieve more. You just need to start. Something I feel, just going off exactly what you said with the self-discipline, I also feel like a great deal of self-respect comes into it because you're like, I did that. Like, I'm now the guy that does this. Like, what an achievement. And I think that can be so powerful as well. To respect yourself for what you're doing and every day.
That's a massive thing. Like just doing what you said you're going to do gives people a lot of self-worth and a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
It's a sort of inner like, no, it feels good.
And are there any recent habits you've picked up?
Bad habits or good habits?
Either or.
Bad habits and good habits. I think, a good habit. So one thing that I was really struggling with was reaching out to new people to come on the podcast, right? It was always at the bottom of the to-do list. And I was always like, tomorrow. So what I decided this year was, because I am good, one thing I am good at, even if the rest of the days is disasters, I nail the morning, right? And I get what I need to get done then. And I thought, well, hang on a second, why don't I just bolt on, habit stack, reaching out to 2 people every day after I've been writing as part of my morning routine. And that's just been a phenomenal success because I've almost just delegated it to my automatic, habit loop because I'm writing and then I just reach out to 2 people and it's just delegated that. And I know that having stacked that habit with my morning routine is everything's taken care of because it'll happen. It'll just slowly compound. And it's a numbers game. Some people would say yes, some people would say no. And I'm already seeing it working. And I don't really have to worry or think or stress about it anymore. So that's a good example of building a new habit of, just reaching out or sending those 2 emails or sliding into people's DMs. And then a bad habit is Marks and Spencer's triple chocolate crunch. Because when my wife was pregnant and we were close to expecting and we had our baby girl recently, everything's all a bit all over the place and you eat at different times, and just got into eating this triple chocolate crunch, and Jesus, it's good. It's so good. I don't know what it is. It's like the texture and we have some. I mean, I instead of I thought, yeah, I don't really feel like supper tonight, and then an hour later I'll be pouring myself a bowl of that. So I've got to kick that habit then.
I understood. How would you?
Not buy it, not have it in the house. Change the environment.
Yeah. So you made me think of something when you said about emailing the two people. So I don't know if this is your reason, but when I was working, I was doing some sales for a startup. I hated having to call people. Just hated it because felt like I was not being genuine I had to sort of play this role. Ironic since I'm an actor, but I had to sort of do this bit.
Yeah.
Really wasn't me. It just didn't gel with my personality. And I would put those calls at the bottom of the list. And I'm wondering if the reason yours were at the bottom of the list was because of a similar sort of visceral reaction, and if that changes once it becomes habit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say do the hardest thing first at the beginning of the day.
Which I don't.
Because you're not going to do the hardest thing at the end of the day when you're tired and, I'll do it tomorrow or whatever. So,
but I like to tick something off. I like to put I'm already out of bed, and I write get out of bed on the top of the to-do list so I can tick that off. That's like how.
Well, it's nice to tick things off. But I would try and put that at the, put it as one of the things you should do first.
Yeah.
Is do those cold calls. I mean, obviously you can't cold call until people might be in the office. But if you're trying to get to a decision maker, it might be good to do that early because the gatekeeper, the secretary hasn't got until 9 or whatever. Yeah. And I can't remember who made a big success of doing that, but
I think it was Tim Ferriss.
I think it might have been. Yeah, I think it might have been.
That's something I need to. That's the habit I need to do.
There you
Put
go.
the bad things first, get them out of the way. Something I hate with me coming back and going forward, not really willingly, I sort of have to come back and go forward.
Sorry, between Vietnam and
here, is you lose all your environment. Yeah, the nice sort of environment that you create with whatever. If for example, like eating healthy, working out, working hard, you might have your
routine.
Yeah, your routine, your setup. Everything you have, and then you move to another, and then it's like, we've got to start again. So that's something that I find really challenging at the moment. Hopefully that's going to stop for a bit, but
that's definitely. I mean, traveling is one of the worst things possible in terms of sticking to routines. Traveling is great, but in terms of sticking to those routines and things,
it's remarkable. Like this sort of nomadic life, actually, I don't think would work. Like I quite like the idea of that back in the day, sort of, living where you want, working remotely. But I actually think I like to have my environment that I've made.
Yeah, you've got those cues around you. I think the only thing that can help with that is if you can try and sort of bring some of the cues with you. So let's say you've got a yoga mat or something, and that's part of your morning routine, or whether you stretch, do yoga, or do some exercises or whatever. Like, rather than just traveling and being like, oh, in the hotel, or is there just take that yoga mat with you because it's consistent and it's a cue, and that's in your room. Then that was in your room back at home. That's in your hotel room. You can just get out and use that. It's easy. You haven't got to go through 3 steps like call the concierge, go down to the gym. Can I borrow it? Bring it upstairs or whatever, or get the key or figure out where it's like, no, get out of bed and go onto that mat.
Yep.
You might be able to just and that, again, it's about not trying to overcomplicate things. When you're traveling, like your environment is totally different, you might not be able to get the things that you need to do certain things. So just do that one thing. Like if it's a 20-minute routine or whatever on your mat, then that's enough to kind of keep you anchored and move the body, and enough to make you feel like you're staying consistent. So when you get home, you can then keep going.
Yeah.
Are you quite a disciplined person anyway?
I can be, but I can be very disciplined by myself. It is other people that will, in a second, I'm off.
You're influenced quite easily.
Yeah. Which is difficult because I said to you earlier, the thing that I'd have a problem with would be like cutting people off and being like, no, I'm going to be like this now. So it's a balance. And my current way around it is I kind of run away. I'm like, they're like, where are you? And I'm in the coffee shop before they've even woken up. So I'm like, oh. I guess it's the same thing with the 5 a.m. club. You're awake before anyone is.
So you can't get influenced.
You can't get influenced.
You can't get influenced,
so I do the same kind of system, but in a physical way.
I know what you mean, though, because there's that sort of, I mean, there are certain people who, might be wanting to distract you or come and do this or come and do that. And like
out of their best intentions.
Out of their best intentions. And you don't want to be like, hi, I don't want to be your friend anymore, right? Or, sorry, we're going in different directions. And you kind of tread water with them a little bit. You kind of just like, just not this time. You kind of feel you're bullshitting them a little bit.
Exactly.
And I think that what's really powerful is like trying to get to a point where you can be like just super honest, be like, listen, let's say they say to you, I'll come to Ben, do you want to come to this event tonight? There's something really good going on. And you've got nothing on tonight, but you don't want to go because it's, you'd rather just maybe go to the gym or have some of you time, right? Or read a book. But you feel like that's not enough of an excuse not to come. And so you might sort of make something up or feel you have to come. But to get to a place where you're like, Charlie, no offense, it sounds really good. I appreciate you, but I don't even have anything on tonight, but this is not what I feel like doing. And I want to prioritize some other stuff,
Yeah.
And not making that a thing. But then if that person is then, if I'm like, Ben, stop being such a dick, like, come on, have fun. You never, that's when you'd be like, no, respect where I'm coming from. Like, I think that's the difference. If they're like, that's totally cool, they get you, and Ben's super focused on this, I'm not going to try and whatever. I mean, it's obviously riddled with nuance that because like they might be like a really good friend and, you might be a bit down at the moment or, you've been working too hard and, you've had a rough breakup recently and the guys want to get together and take you out. Right. So, but I think just, it's more about getting to that point when you be like, thanks, but no, it's not in line with like what I'm trying to achieve this month or this week, or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. That's something I need to also, that's like a good one.
It's not easy.
No. And it does annoy me that a lot of the content that I'm exposed to it makes it sound like it's as easy as like that. You can just like cut everyone out your life and sail through. And it's like, that's just, and obviously I'm putting a lot of emphasis on that. There's a lot of other things that people are saying. Like, for example, a friend of mine is far more disciplined than I am and really focused on their goals. And the thing they can't do is they can't stop snacking. Like that, they know that to follow the guide that they believe they should be, it's cut the habit, stop snacking, focus only on these meals, blah, blah, but that's how they get through the day. That's how they enjoy. And it's like, we can't just be.
That works for them.
That works for them. Yeah. So I think there's something that I've been thinking about and I have a problem with a lot, which is why I like these discussions because they're not so hard line.
It's definitely, it's what works for you. Tim Ferriss has got a great book called Tools for Titans. I don't know if you've heard of it. Basically, it's a thick old book, right? But he's basically interviewed, I think, hundreds of people, elite sportsmen, businessmen, thought leaders, academics, like kick-ass people that are like super successful. And he's literally got like 2.5 to 3 pages on each person. And it breaks down like morning routine, like habits, philosophy, like what work, like what their fitness things does. And, there are some really interesting themes, like the majority of them do some form of meditation or like some of them have a morning routine, some of them don't. Tim Ferriss has already consolidated like all of these high performance people. And he's already broken things down into like the areas within his like interview with them. And so you can just go flick through that and then cherry pick the things that you might want to try because they have been successful for these people. And then try a bunch of things. There's like acro yoga where you like hang from these harnesses
Actually,
upside down or whatever. Like that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Go and try that. Go and try a bunch of things and then just iterate towards what works for you. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
Look, this was great. I'm glad we got you into the studio while you're back from Vietnam, and I think it's definitely something we should keep up. And for those listening, every sort of 3 or 4 episodes, it's nice to dig into, riff a little bit about some of these themes and connect dots, etc. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Over and out.